Alas, one by one, the old man couldn't help but sigh. Eluoquin, I have always seen your talent. To be honest, I am very optimistic about you. I have also heard about you. The Giras family is the first family of our Salem Empire. In fact, if you want to become a member of the Giras family, your talent is completely enough. You just lack one identity. As long as you join the Holy Land of the Empire, maybe the Giras family, the Leaf family's attitude towards you will soften and you are now a 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master. Although you are just an ordinary disciple when you join the Holy Land, once you advance to the 8th-level imperial spiritual master, you can become the son of the saint. When the time comes, you will have a great status and identity in the empire, and you will not be like you are now, even being unable to enter the Gers family. The old man shook his head repeatedly. I can't even figure out who you are. Why? Dean Merrill was very sad. I'm sorry, Dean Merrill, to disappoint you. Loken said. You're not sorry for me, you're sorry for yourself. The old man said in an iron voice, forget it, since you don't want to, I won't force it. I will keep this quota for you. If you change your mind, just come to me. Dean Merrill, if there is a suitable person for that spot, you should give it to someone else. I don't think I will need it. Loken said calmly, and then turned around left the office. The old man's beard blew up all of a sudden, his eyes widened, and he looked at Loken's leaving back, but he didn't know what to say, so he just sighed endlessly. Outside the luxurious office building, Loken walked firmly into the distance. His fists were clenched and he murmured in his heart, I, Loken, will follow my master in the future, so how can I join the Holy Land of the Empire? Woolen cloth. He looked at the blue sky in the distance, and a strong coldness and loneliness surrounded him tightly at this moment. Master, where are you now? He murmured in his mouth, didn't you say that when Loken reaches the 7th level of the Imperial Spiritual Master, you will take Loken around the world? Loken was full of feelings for Jason. I miss you. In Luo Kuan's heart, his master Jason is omnipotent. When he was diagnosed that he would not live to be 30, it was Jason who cured him and allowed him to advance from a 4th-level heavenly spiritual master in just 3 years. A 6th-level senior spiritual master. Jason was always there to protect him. Master Ghost Loken still remembers that time when Patriarch Cornhill of the Naton family joined forces with the Loki family of Rainbow City to completely destroy the Mori family. Loken faced him in the ring. When the leader of the Cornhill clan was about to strike a decisive blow, Master Jason arrived at the last moment. Loken clearly remembered that at the most dangerous moment, who dares to touch my disciple? Jason roared angrily, blocking the attack of the leader of the Cornhill clan, and stood in front of him without hesitation. 3.5 years, almost 4 years have passed, and the master and apprentice have not seen each other for nearly 4 years. The past 2 years of life have filled Loken's heart with pain. He has grown up, but the cost of growth is staggering. 2 years of persistence has made his heart as hard as steel, and he no longer has the innocence of the past. My memory and admiration for Master are still the same as before. In a daze, his eyes were a little wet. Puxalai. A nosed eagle suddenly flew out of the woods nearby, waking Loken up. Huh. Feeling his somewhat moist eyes, Loken shook his head. Master, if he sees me like this, he will definitely be very disappointed. Could it be that this little setback knocked me out? The spiritual power in his body shocked. Loken's somewhat moist eyes were evaporated all of a sudden. A trace of determination rose from the depths of his eyes again, and then he strode away. The residence of the Lord of Chien City. Jason and Eludiba sat opposite each other. Both of them had smiles on their faces, and the maid on the side withdrew after serving some tea and snacks. In the living room, Eludiba looked at Jason carefully. Nearly 4 years have passed, and Jason has grown from a boy back then to a young man now. After receiving the notification from the guards at the door, Eludiba and Kester had the same reaction. They rushed out and then excitedly welcomed Jason into the mansion. Haha, Master Jace, I don't know whether I should call you Master Jace or Master Jason now. Eludiba said happily with a smile on his face. Unlike Kester and the others, Eludiba still knew something about Jason because of Kiros, but he didn't know why Jason kept his name anonymous in the first place. He consciously didn't say anything nonsense. Haha, Lord Eludiba, just call me Jason. I am now the president of the Elixir Guild of the Empire's Rondo Province. Jason smiled. President of the Londo Province Panacea Union? Are you the legendary president of the Rainbow Tower who defeated the Bolding family in an instant? Eludiba's mouth suddenly grew bigger, and there was a trace of anger in his eyes. Be surprised. What? Sir Eludiba, my reputation is not so big that even the Cheer province has heard about it, right? Jason was also a little surprised. Cheer province, Daron, and Londo province both belong to the southern part of the Kiansalan Empire, but one is located in the easternmost part of the empire, and the other is located in the westernmost part of the empire. There are still one or two provinces separated in between. If your name is in Luandwa Empire, Jason would not be surprised at all if Duohang province is a household name, but when even Eludiba hears it, Jason is a little surprised. Haha. Eludiba burst into laughter immediately. Master Jason, don't call me an adult or an adult. I can't afford it. I learned about your matter from Mu, who is the governor of Daluo province, is in close contact with you, the Rondo province. Actually, I should have thought of it earlier. Eludiba shook his head. He mentioned your name at the beginning, but at that time I didn't care either. Now that I think about it, the person who can be the president of the Londo Province Spiritual Medicine Master Guild is naturally an extremely important figure in the Medicine Master Tower. He is young and his name is Jason. Who else can it be besides you? Eludiba had a hint of surprise on his face. By the way, I heard about the Imperial Elixir auction you held. When the time comes, you can't stop me from the door. Eludiba said with a smile. Why should we be so polite between us? Jason smiled and said, if you like any elixir, just tell me when the time comes and I'll just leave it for you. 1 or 2 bottles of 7th level Imperial elixir. Jasonson still didn't take it to heart very much. No, Eludiba waved his hand repeatedly, we are bidding fairly and we will not take advantage of you. Your elixir was not obtained in vain. After the two chatted casually for a while, Jason's face became serious and he changed the topic to what he wanted to know. Eludiba, do you know anything about Loken? He looked at Eludiba and spoke. Eludiba's expression was also a little serious. Actually, I am also concerned about this matter. I think you have also been to the Mori family. You know, the Guras family is the 3rd member of our Saran Empire. The power of this family is unparalleled. The current patriarch is an 8th level Imperial Spiritual Master, but this is nothing. The key is that there is a reclusive elder in the Guras family who is a 9th level Holy Spirit Master. 9th level Holy Spirit Master. Jason couldn't help but be surprised. On this continent, the 9th level Holy Spirit Master is already the most powerful one. A family that can have a 9th level Holy Spirit Master is it has an extremely terrifying influence. However, after learning from Kester that the Nagirs family was the first family in the Salem Empire, Jason was already prepared for the fact that the opponent had the ear power of a 9th level Holy Spirit Master. Although he was a little surprised, he's still not too shocking. Moreover, when Jason heard the surnames of Lord Odlin and Fellet, he was also surprised that the Guras family was exactly the same as the Guras family, one of the 4 founding families of the Lingdo Empire in later generations. Jason was also the same at the beginning. There were doubts about whether the 2 Guras families were one, but Jason saw that the Lord of Aldrin City was just a small city lord, so he ruled it out. Now, at a glance, the Guras family that Jason met in later generations is the same as this one. A Guras family is most likely one and the same. Eludiba, even if the Nagirs family is extremely powerful, with Loken's talent, the other party won't refuse, right? Jason said in confusion again. This is indeed not the reason for the other party's rejection. The other party's rejection is because there are other suitors pursuing Falut in the imperial capital. Other suitors? Jason was curious, what kind of suitors could they be? Let the Gura's family give up such a talented person as their disciple Loken. Eludiba shook his head, I don't know about this. I also overheard the Lord Odlin talking about it. You must know that Falut is a direct descendant of the Gura's family. Her uncle Branchet is the current patriarch of the Gura's family, and as the first family in the empire, many families want to marry him. Jason nodded. It seems that the attitude of the Gura's family comes from on the other suitors. No matter who the suitor is, I still want to help Loken. Jason said in his heart. Jason. Eludiba said again, if you want to help Loken, you can go to the imperial capital to find Master Balandaean and the others. Maybe they can know more. After all, I stay in Chiur all year round. The province is not very clear about matters in the imperial capital. Master Balandaean? Speaking of Balandaean, Jason thought of another person, Tai, whom he had helped back then. Prince Leah. That night, Jason stayed overnight in the city lord's palace in Eludiba. After staying there early the next morning, Jason left Eludiba again and flew towards the imperial capital. I am out of town, so this chapter may be the only one I can write today, and I really can't write it. I was planning to save it for the past 2 days, but alas, I went out with a lot of authors in Wuxi to think about it carefully. After bidding farewell to Eludiba and leaving Scarlet Flame City, Jason traveled north for several days, passing through several provinces of the Salem Empire and climbing over countless mountains, crossed the most famous river in the Salem Empire, traveled tens of thousands of miles in the Salem Empire, and finally arrived at the Imperial Jade City, the imperial capital of the Salem Empire. Imperial Jade City, the administrative and power center of the Saale Empire, the 4 major continental empires, is the holy place in the hearts of all people in the Saale Empire. The cold wind was howling, and the sun was shining gently on the earth at the end of January. It did not bring much warmth to people, but compared to the harshest winter, the weather was still starting to get warmer. At this moment, on a trail outside the imperial capital, Jade City, a young man with long black hair and a black heavy sword on his back was walking slowly, while looking up at the majestic city not far away. Emperor Jade City, the imperial capital of the Saran Empire, the 4 major continental empires, is the gathering place for countless masters of the Saran Empire. The young man murmured in his mouth. He did not have the excitement of ordinary people seeing the imperial capital for the first time, and his eyes were calm. Incomparable. As the imperial capital of the Saran Empire, one of the 4 great empires, Imperial Jade City is extremely majestic. Looking at the entire Stern continent, there are only a few cities that can rival it in terms of size. It is like a wild beast, lying in the hinterland of the southern part of the continent, stretching endlessly. The city walls are simple and old, giving people a grand and simple feeling. They have experienced thousands or tens of thousands of years of weathering and are immortal. The magnificent city gate tower is 100 feet high, majestic and extremely majestic. Looking from a distance, such a large ancient city gives people a suffocating sense of oppression and a strong solemnity. This is the unique temperament of a country's capital that cannot be copied by other cities. The Imperial Jade City, is Loken here? Looking at the tall city gate, Jason had a smile on his lips, and slowly walked into the Imperial Jade City under the sunlight. At this moment, no one noticed this young man with black hair. Little did he know that this black-haired young man would cause such huge waves in the entire Salem Empire. The East City of Jade City, the imperial capital of the Salem Empire. This is the area where all the dignitaries of the empire live. From the princes and ministers to the major families, almost all the mansions of the nobles are built here. It can be said that being able to own a mansion in the East City is at the expense of the other party's illustrious identity of. In the East City, there is the most prosperous area, Xingli Garden. The princes and top famous officials of the empire all live in this Xingli garden. This area is the most noble place in the entire East City and is the empire's center of power. At this moment, on the main road of Xingli Garden in the Dongqing district of the imperial capital, a young man wearing a blue robe and a sword hanging from his waist was slowly walking towards an extremely luxurious mansion. This Loken is here again. Seeing this man, the two guards at the door of the mansion couldn't help but sigh. As the guards of the Gers family, the two of them also know Loken very well. Since 2 years ago, Loken has come to the door of the mansion twice in the middle and at the end of every month without interruption. The purpose is to please see Miss Felt. Because of the conflict, 2 years ago, Loken wanted to break into the Gers family, but was driven out by Lord Depp. Fortunately, Master Barandine happened to be passing by, and Lord Depp did not kill him. As the first family in the imperial capital, the Gures family had such a sensation happening at the gate, which naturally aroused heated discussions among countless people. Because of this, Loken was almost known to the entire empire. As the guardians of the Gures family, the two of them understood each other clearly. Just when everyone thought that Loken would give up completely after this incident, the second month later, Loken came to the door of the Gures family again, but this time, after being rejected, Loken did not forcefully break in, but just left silently. Because he didn't, the Gures family just let it go and didn't do anything to it. From then on, Loken would come to Gers mansion twice a month, asking to see Falut. After being rejected, he left alone for 2 years. At the beginning, the gatekeepers were very resistant and disdainful towards Loken. However, as time passed, Loken joined the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy and continued to practice hard, and was promoted to 2 levels in 2 years, became a 7th level senior imperial spiritual master, and paid uninterrupted devout visits every month, which made the 2 guards feel extremely admirable for Loken's persistence. With Loken's talent and strength, it is too easy to marry a beautiful woman from any major family in the empire, but he only loves Miss Felit. Except for practicing, no one has heard of him in the imperial capital. There is no entertainment, everything is cut off, and everyone is shocked. Loken, today happens to be the 30th. You are too punctual. When Luokuan walked to the door of the mansion, the 2 guards spoke in a familiar voice. In 2 years, they and Luokuan have already very familiar. Both of you, please report this. I hope my family will allow me to see Felt. Loken stood at the door and spoke calmly. Okay, wait a moment, I'll go in and report. One of the guards sighed, and then walked into the side door of the mansion. But before he could walk in, he saw the door of the mansion suddenly opened, and then a group of people walked out. Haha, Mr. Depp, please stay. My nephew cannot afford to be so polite. The one walking at the front was a young man in his late 20s, with long golden hair and blue eyes. He has double eyes and a soft and white face. He is quite handsome. There is an inexplicable charm in his movements. Walking behind him was a middle-aged man with a Chinese character face, who was sending the young man off with a smile on his face. Seeing this man's appearance, Luo Kuan's eyes couldn't help but change slightly. Because he recognized that this middle-aged man was Uncle Falut, the 8th-level low-level imperial spiritual master who had prevented him from seeing Falut in Rainbow City and had beaten him out of the Gures family 2 years ago. Depp. Haha, Clooney, walk slowly. When you get back, say hello to Patriarch Matt for me. Depp welcomed the blonde young man down the steps with a smile on his face. Well, Clooney will definitely do it. The blonde young man nodded and walked past Loken. Depp was about to turn around and leave, but when he saw Loken next to the mansion, his face that was originally full of smiles suddenly became restrained. Loken, it's you again. How many times have I told you that you can't be with Felt, just give up? Depp said with a cold face, don't tell me that you come here every month to ask for an audience. Even if you come to ask for an audience every day, the family will not agree. Go back quickly and leave the imperial capital, otherwise don't blame me, Depp, for being rude. If it hadn't been for Balandaean, master pleads for you, you have died in my hands a long time ago, and you have not learned this lesson. Depp said coldly. Loken clenched his fists, but said nothing. The other party was from Gura's family, and he had to hold back for felt. After hearing Depp's words, the blonde young man who was about to leave suddenly stopped and his eyes fell on Loken. Are you the Loken who is obsessed with Falut? The blonde young man looked at Loken playfully with an indifferent look, with a hint of disdain in his tone. Who are you? Loken looked at the other person and spoke calmly. Boy, listen carefully. Falut is the person that I, Clooney, am pursuing. If I hear about your relationship with Falut again in the future, don't blame me for being rude. The other party looked down, condescending. He looked at Loken. Huh? Upon hearing this, Luoquan's eyes suddenly burst into light, his fists clenched, and an inexplicable aura suddenly shot up from his body and escaped. What? You are not convinced and you still want to take action? The blonde young man looked at Luoquan indifferently. I heard that you are now the #1 master of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. You seem to be very famous. Do you think you are great? The young man snorted coldly and looked at Luoquan coldly. I heard that he comes from a province in the south of the empire. To tell you the truth, although the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy is very famous in the empire, it is actually just an inferior place. The real geniuses and masters of the empire are all in the Holy Land of the empire. The geniuses in the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy are actually just rubbish who cannot enter the Holy Land. The blonde young man looked at Loken with a sweeping look. Loken Depp also spoke at the door of the mansion. Loken, just give up. The family will not agree to the matter between you and Falut. In the imperial capital, there are countless people pursuing Falut. Clooney is one of the best among them. Do you know who Clooney is? The first disciple of the Imperial Holy Land, a 7th-level senior Imperial Spiritual Master. He is only a little short of being able to advance to the 8th-level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master and become an Imperial Spiritual Master. The noble holy son of the Holy Land, who do you think you are? Although he is a 7th-level high-level Imperial Spiritual Master like you, but do you know that the gap between you and him is more than a little bit different? Falut the suitor. Luoquan's eyes suddenly burst into light, his body boiling with fighting spirit, and he looked at Clooney coldly. It seems that you still don't give up. Bruni looked at Loquan coldly. In that case, today, I formally challenge you. Do you dare to accept the challenge? A sneer appeared at the corner of Loquan's mouth. What's wrong? Dare. Well, the #1 genius of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, you can also be considered a celebrity. One day later, at the duel arena of the Imperial Capital, I will make you give up completely and get out of the Imperial Capital. If you don't have the guts, you can abstain. Clooney said coldly, a toad also wants to eat a swan? What a dream. Immediately, Clooney stopped looking at Loken and walked away. How stupid. Do you think you and nephew Clooney are both 7th-level senior Imperial Spiritual Masters, so there is any hope of defeating each other? It's ridiculous, but it's okay, you will know yourself the day after tomorrow. How big of a gap is there between you and Clooney's nephew to make you completely give up? Do you think you are excellent? Not to mention identity, status, even strength and talent, you are just average. Depp looked at the door of the mansion. He looked at Clooney with disdain, then turned around and walked into the mansion, closing the door. Seeing this scene, the guard who was about to go in to report also retreated to the door and showed a wry smile to Loken. Of course, Loken also knew that today's visit was completely useless, so he immediately nodded to the two of them, then left the Gers family's mansion and walked in the direction of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. Along the way, his eyes were firm and his heart boiled with fighting spirit. No matter who wants to take Felt away from me, I, Loken, will not spare him. Loken clenched his fists and swore secretly. At this moment, at the entrance of the Royal Lingwu Academy, a young man with a black heavy sword on his back was standing in front of the Royal Lingwu Academy, looking at the magnificent gate. Is this the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy? Jason whispered, and then he walked towards a student who was walking out of the door. This is a girl about 20 years old, wearing a fiery red robe, with a fair face and curly hair, which is quite beautiful and moving. Hello, may I ask, is there a student named Loken here? Jason came to the female student and asked. The female student seemed to be thinking about something. After being stopped by Jason like this, she almost bumped into Jason. She couldn't help but feel slightly angry. When she raised her head, she saw the clothes Jason was wearing. Wearing a gray robe of ordinary linen and a dark heavy sword on the back, he couldn't help but show contempt on his face. Loken is a celebrity in our Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. Who doesn't know this and comes over to ask stupidly, your way of picking up conversations is really old-fashioned. The female student rolled her eyelids and disdained to say anything, but waited for her. After seeing Jason's rather handsome appearance, he couldn't help but pause. However, the disdain on her face has not diminished. In Stern Continent, strength is respected. Women like them, who can be admitted to the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, are all quite talented in cultivation and are favored by ordinary women. The men's looks are different, and they are more powerful. All they see is the other person's background and strength. Jason frowned slightly, but there was no displeasure on his face. He continued, "Can you take me to his residence, classmate? I am his friend. Let me take you to Luokun's residence?" The female student looked Jason up and down, the disdain in her eyes became even worse, and she refused directly, "I am not available." After saying that, she muttered, "Say your way of picking up a conversation is very old-fashioned, and you are still obsessed with it. Luoken is the #1 genius in our Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. He practices hard every day. I have never heard of him having any friends in the capital. You are the only one. Do you still want to have a relationship with Loken?" Jason is now wearing a cheap linen robe, carrying a gray heavy sword on his back, and the spiritual power fluctuations on his body are also extremely weak, and he is already regarded by this woman as in the name of asking for something, they actually want to talk to the men who are talking to them. Jason shook his head. He was about to ask other people when he saw a sudden burst of noisy exclamations coming from around him. "Look, Loken, it's Loken. The #1 genius in our academy, a 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master. Loken rarely appears. He practices hard every day. It's rare to see him out. I heard that he is pursuing girls. The family's falut has always been rejected by the Gura's family. Such a good man, why don't you like me?" At the entrance of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, many students came in and out, and many people exclaimed, looking at a figure walking on the street in the distance, there was an expression of admiration in his eyes, and the beautiful woman in front of Jason also looked at the figure with shining eyes, and said in a nymphomaniacal tone, "It would be great if I could be Luo Kuan's girlfriend." At the entrance of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, Jason's eyes also flashed with excitement. He turned around suddenly and looked at the man with his head lowered not far away, who seemed to be thinking. A young man holding something. Jason recognized that familiar figure at once. This person was his second disciple Luo Kuan. At the entrance of the academy, when they saw Loken approaching, many students couldn't help but make way for Loken, who was lowering his head and thinking about something. However, Jason just stood at the door, looking at his disciple. Compared with 4 years ago, Loken has grown taller and more mature, and his aura is completely different from before. Loken, Jason said excitedly amid the astonished gazes of all the students. Along the way from the Gura's family mansion, Loken was thinking about the duel with Clooney the day after tomorrow, and did not pay attention to the surrounding situation. Suddenly, an extremely familiar voice suddenly came into his ears, waking him up suddenly. This sound, Luokuan raised his head with excitement and disbelief in his eyes and looked in the direction of the sound. Not far in front of him, he saw a black-haired young man carrying a black heavy sword, looking at him quietly. The familiar face and weapon shocked Luokuan as if he was electrocuted. At this moment, his mind went blank. In everyone's shocked eyes, the idol in the hearts of all Royal Spiritual Martial Academy students was Luoquan, known as the #1 genius in the academy, opened his mouth in front of all the students, but tears flowed out without any scruples. "Master," Luoquan shouted loudly. He ran forward 2 steps excitedly, his eyes completely falling on the black-haired young man. "Luoquan!" A smile broke out at the corner of Jason's mouth, and there was a hint of excitement in his heart. The gentle, childish, and kind-hearted boy back then is now a young man of 1.78 meters tall. "Master, you're finally here. You're finally here. I thought you didn't want Luoquan anymore." Luoquan rushed in front of Jason in an instant. At this time, he completely forgot about Felt, and he was filled with tears in his heart. It was endless excitement. He could no longer suppress the excitement at this moment. "Don't worry, why wouldn't Master want you?" Jason patted Luoquan on the shoulder and looked at Luoquan carefully, with a smile on his face. "Master." Luoquan looked at Jason with excitement, and hugged Jason tightly. Seeing his master, Luoquan felt unprecedented excitement in his heart, and his tears kept falling, and he spoke with a choked voice, "Master, Luoquan misses you so much." At this moment, the loneliness of many years disappeared from his heart. He seemed to have escaped from the storm and returned to the ship in the harbor, feeling safer than ever before. Looking at the Academy's top genius, the 7th-level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master, Luoquan, who has always been strong, aloof, and indifferent, showed such a childish behavior. At the entrance of the Academy, all the students looked at this with dull expressions. Once seen, I couldn't believe my eyes. The female student who was talking to Jason opened her mouth even more, her eyes filled with disbelief, and the book in her hand fell to the floor without even realizing it. Jason, Luoquan, the master and apprentice have been separated for nearly 4 years. More than 5 years ago, Jason came to Chi'er province and cast God's wrath and was seriously injured. However, he was accidentally saved by Luoquan. Then Jason accepted Luoquan as his disciple and put him on his body. The damage to the wood spirit body was healed, and with Jason's help, Luoquan advanced from a 4th-level Heavenly Spiritual Master to a 6th-level Senior Spiritual Master in just over a year. After that, Jason and his father set off back to the Northwest countries. At that time, Jason was only 20 years old, and Luoquan was only 19 years old. But now, for years have passed, Jason is 24 years old, Luoquan is also 23 years old, and their master and apprentice meet again. In Luoquan's villa. Jason and Luoquan were sitting on chairs in the living room across from each other. As the #1 master of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy and a 7th-level high-level Imperial Spiritual Master, Luoquan naturally does not need to live in the dormitory area like ordinary students. Instead, he has his own villa and small building, which has everything you need, and even a simple training room. Jason and Luoquan were both talking about what happened in the past few years. At first, Jason needed to remain anonymous, because he was not very strong. Now he is considered a powerful man, so he naturally talked about his affairs briefly. Listening to Jason's story, Luoquan's face was also full of shock. He did not expect that his master had so many experiences, was only 1 year older than him, and was actually one of the top forces in the mainland, the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower. His core disciple is also the president of the Elixir Masters Union in the Empire's London province. Compared with him, what he has experienced is nothing at all. Now, I just happen to be put in the Londo province outside the Elixir Tower. After settling the matter there, I will naturally come over to see you. Jason smiled. I will stay in the Salem Empire for more than a year. When the Genius Trial Tournament of the major forces in the mainland begins, I will return to the Alchemist Tower. Genius Trial Tournament Master, your strength is already so powerful. Luoquan said in surprise, although 4 years ago, when Jason was a 5th-level senior sect spiritual master, he killed the Cornhill clan leader who was a 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master. He also knew that Jason's strength must be more than superficial. Jia acted like that, but after hearing Jason's words, he couldn't help being surprised. Nowadays, Loken is considered a genius in the Salem Empire. He has even been invited by the Empire's Holy Land. Naturally, he is quite familiar with some of the Empire's geniuses. The strongest geniuses in the four empires are generally concentrated in their respective holy places. Ordinary disciples are a bit like ordinary disciples of the spiritual medicine master tower. As the first disciple of the Holy Land, Clooney is equivalent to the senior disciple of the spiritual medicine master tower. The strongest among them, somewhat similar to Leonardo's identity. In the Holy Land of the Empire, ordinary disciples only need to advance to the 8th level low-level Emperor Spirit Master. You can become the Holy Son of the Holy Land, and your status is somewhat similar to the core disciple in the pagoda of the Spiritual Medicine Master. Loken had also heard about this continental genius trial. There were only 20 places in the entire empire, and they were all the most outstanding figures among the Holy Sons of the Empire. They were all extraordinary, and the strongest among them were the 8th level high-level Emperor Spiritual Master is the weakest, and the 8th level Intermediate Emperor Spiritual Master is also the weakest. As the two top powers in the mainland, the Alchemist Tower has geniuses who are only stronger than the four empires. Jason can represent the Alchemist Tower in the Genius Trial competition, which requires at least 8 Luo Kuan couldn't help but be shocked by the strength of the mid-level Imperial Spiritual Master. You must know that the Master is only 1 year older than himself, but his strength is not at the same level as his. What is even more exaggerated is that the Master is different from the Holy Sons of the Empire. As a core disciple of the Elixir Master Tower, the Master, and he is also a master of elixirs. When Loken thought about the speed of improvement between his master's strength 4 years ago and his current strength, he also thought about how Jason 4 years ago could discuss elixir science with a 7th level intermediate elixir master like Master Ballandine. In terms of Taoism, now that 4 years have passed, Master's attainments in elixir science have probably reached a level that is simply unreachable by an ordinary elixir master. When he thought of this, Luo Kuan's heart couldn't help but tremble. Compared with his master, he was really nothing. Loken. Jason looked at Luo Kuan. I have met your father Kester and Aludaba before, and heard about the matter between you and Naflet. However, the specifics are not I understand very well. Tell me, how are you doing now? Luo Kuan nodded honestly, with a wry smile on his face, and said, Master, it's like this. Immediately, Luo Kuan told everything he had experienced in detail. So, you're going to face off against Clooney tomorrow afternoon? Jason couldn't help but frown. Originally, Jason's preparation after arriving in the imperial capital was to first go to Master Ballandine and the others to learn from them who Loken's competitors were, and then negotiate with the Guras family to let Loken and the senior officials of the Guras family and Falut met once and used various methods to help Loken. But now that they heard that Loken will face off against Clooney tomorrow, these matters can only be postponed. The most critical thing at hand is yes, let Loken win this duel. Otherwise, if Loken loses this duel and loses to others in his best aspects, no matter how hard Jason tries, it will be difficult to impress others. How about Clooney's strength? Are you sure about this duel? Jason looked at Loken and spoke. Loken said confidently, Master, don't worry. Although Clooney is known as the first disciple of the Holy Land of the Empire, he is only a 7th level senior imperial spiritual master. Although I have only been promoted to the 7th level senior imperial spiritual master not long ago, as long as I'm not afraid of those who haven't reached the 8th level of emperor spiritual master. Master, didn't you say that my body is the body of a wood spirit? Who else should I be afraid of at the same level? If anyone stands in front of me, I will just kick him away. Master, this is what you taught me back then. You should have this kind of confidence. Jason nodded, the first disciple of the Empire Holy Land, a 7th level senior Emperor Spirit Master, like this. Well, you will fight with me later and let me see how strong you are. Jason wanted to use the strength of the first person in the Elixir City in the Elixir Master Tower to verify and see the true strength of Loken. Where exactly is it? At the same time, Jason is also quite curious about the strength of the wood spirit's body. While Jason and Loken were communicating in the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, the duel between Niobe and Loken tomorrow afternoon had already spread throughout the imperial capital. After the news of this decisive battle spread, the people in the entire imperial capital became excited. One is the first disciple of the Imperial Holy Land, a 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master, and Clooney of the Downey family. One is the #1 genius of the Imperial Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, the 7th-level senior imperial spiritualist, Loken. The most important thing is Lokuan has already become a celebrity in the imperial capital because of what happened 2 years ago. Clooney used to be a secretive person, but now because of his duel with Loken, everyone knows about him. Felt is pursuing the Guras family. The battle between these two people was completely for the decisive battle for Felt. Suddenly, various scandals about Loken, Clooney, and Felt began to spread in the streets and alleys of the imperial capital. At the same time, many people he also focused his attention on the Guras family. The Guras family is the first family in the empire. It is extremely powerful and is the target of countless families who want to marry. It is unknown how many families have mentioned marriage with the Guras family. Intention, and Falut is a direct descendant of the Guras family, with an extraordinary status that attracts the attention of countless forces. Therefore, many forces need to pay attention to the attitude of the Guras family. If this duel was ordered by the Guras family, then the significance would be extraordinary. This shows that the Guras family approves of these two people and wants to take advantage of it. Pick one. However, the attitude of the Guras family made many forces breathe a sigh of relief. Facing this vigorous duel, the Guras family did not make any statement or say a word. This shows that it was a private duel between the two parties, not an instruction from the Guras family. In the open space behind the Royal Spiritual Martial Arts Academy's Lokuan Villa, there is a training ground. Jason and Loken were standing at opposite ends of the training ground. Jason looked directly at Loken, that Clooney is of the gold element. I will use the attributes of the metal element to compete with you now. Don't have the slightest scruples. Use all your strength to the best of your ability. Let me see your growth over the years. Yes, master. Loken said, and drew out the long sword from his waist. A powerful wood spiritual power continued to rise from his body, terrifying. And the astonishing wood spiritual power instantly filled the entire training ground. Not bad, it looks good. Jason looked at Loken, sighed, and then said, Loken, attack with all your strength. I know. Loken said, and his figure shook suddenly. The whole person has turned into a green afterimage, rushing towards Jason like lightning, and at the same time, the long sword in his hand was pointed at Jason's position, and he slashed down suddenly. Boom! A dazzling green light pierced the sky like a blue chain, twisting and waving in the sky, and then fell in front of Jason. Tisk! Jason did not draw out the black heavy sword behind him, but turned it into a sword with one palm, and swung it out lightly. It seemed slow, but in fact, it strangely blocked the blue leather chain. Pung! The two forces collided together. Jason felt the golden spiritual power in his body tremble suddenly, and a unique coercion enveloped him in an instant. At the same time, an astonishing impact was transmitted directly from the cyan chain, and a heavy force entered Jason's body. Jason felt it carefully, and then the golden spirit beads in his mind began to spin rapidly, and his body shook violently. Pung! A large amount of wood spiritual power passed into Jason's body, was shaken and discharged by him, but Jason's eyes lit up at this moment. Attribute suppression, actually attribute suppression? The spiritual power of the wood element actually suppresses the spiritual power of the metal element. It is indeed a wood spirit body. Jason couldn't help but marvel in his heart. The 5 elements are mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. Under normal circumstances, metal overcomes wood, and the spiritual power of the metal element suppresses the spiritual power of the wood element. But before, Jason actually felt that Loken's wood element spiritual power had a suppressive feeling on him, which made him feel depressed. Jason couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. The attribute spiritual power that normal people cultivate is ordinary attribute spiritual power. However, as a wood spirit body, Luoquan cultivates the ultimate wood spiritual power, which is far superior to ordinary spiritual masters in terms of quality. Even in the face of the metal spiritual power that restrains it, it can also suppress it, let alone other attributes. This is also one of the most important reasons why the wood spirit body is said to be invincible at the same level. While Jason was sighing in his heart, Loken was also attacking nonstop. His figure seemed to turn into a stream of cyan light, flashing constantly. No one knew where he would appear next. At the same time, a series of cyan bolts were like thunderbolts falling from the sky, constantly slashing at Jason. But no matter how Loken attacked, those green horses were always blocked by Jason and resolved one by one. "Master, be careful, I'm going to use my strongest move," Loken shouted loudly. Jason smiled and nodded. "The secret of wood spring comes out of dead trees," Luoquan shouted loudly, and his whole body suddenly emitted a blue light. The blue aurora in the sky came overwhelmingly, intertwined with each other, and enveloped Jason in all directions, like a huge flood drowning Jason in an instant. Jason immediately felt that he was in a blue field, and everything around him was full of vigorous vitality, but this vitality was fatal, constantly suppressing it and absorbing the golden spiritual power emitted by him. "Not bad, not bad." Jason nodded repeatedly. Under this cyan spiritual power, even he had to use great strength to resist the suppression and absorption of this infinite wood spiritual power, let alone ordinary spiritual masters. Immediately, Jason's expression became serious. "Lokuan, be careful." After the words fell, the golden spirit beads in Jason's mind rotated rapidly, golden spiritual power continued to rise from his body, and divine light burst out from his eyes. There was nothing flashy in his movements. Jason aimed at the green light that enveloped him and punched away. Boom! Jason's right fist was shining with golden light, like punching the sun in the sky. The massive green light released by Loken continued to break and explode under Jason's bombardment. "Come, become invisible." Kick, kick, kick in the training ground, Luoquan took a few steps back. His face turned pale at first, and then returned to normal. His eyes looking at Jason were full of shock. The previous move was his strongest move. Originally, he thought it would cause trouble to his master, but he didn't expect that it was broken by Jason's punch. "Yes, the strength is very good." Looking at Loken, whose face was full of shock, Jason sighed with emotion. "Even the tricks I want to defeat you require a certain amount of effort, and your spiritual power, it actually suppresses my attributes. Not bad, really good." Jason nodded with satisfaction, his face full of admiration. He has always been worried that Luo Kunking has excellent talents, but because there is no one to guide him, he does not have a deep understanding of the laws. He has advanced to a higher level, but his combat effectiveness is not strong. But now, Jason's heart is filled with joy. Compared with himself, although Loken's attacks are a little immature, his understanding of the laws is quite thorough. He is definitely not the kind of embroidered pillow who knows how to practice, but is not strong. "Loken, with your strength, generally no one among the 7th level high-level imperial spiritual masters should be your opponent. Even some ordinary 8th level low-level imperial spiritual masters you should be able to defeat," Jason said with emotion. Who is Jason? Although he is only a 7th level senior imperial spiritual master, in terms of real strength, he has completely reached the level of an 8th level senior imperial spiritual master. Moreover, with the golden spirit beads, the golden spiritual power in his body is far greater than that of ordinary people. Metal spiritual masters are purer and more powerful. And the attack that Loken sent out before was something that even he needed to pay attention to, which is enough to show how powerful Loken is. Compared with the 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritualist and the 7th level high-level Emperor Spiritualist, the spiritual power intensity is slightly higher. He has a deeper understanding of the law, and at the same time has the strongest elemental barrier, which can suppress lower-level spiritual masters. However, Loken, who possesses the ultimate wood spirit and is the body of a wood spirit, is not afraid of the suppression of the opponent's elemental barrier at all. In turn, he may suppress the opponent. In terms of spiritual power intensity, the 7th level ultimate wood spiritual power is not there either. Under the ordinary 8th level spiritual power, as for the understanding of the law, Loken, who had previously used dead tree to rejuvenate, had obviously reached an extremely profound level in the wood law. Taken together, the current Loken is completely capable of defeating the average 8th level low-level imperial spiritual master. At least, in Jason's mind, if Loken now fights against the leader of the Bolding family, Mazabin, of the Narando province, the winner is most likely Loken. At the beginning, Jason was a little worried about the duel between Loken and Clooney, but now he saw that he was too cautious and careful. But your attack methods are too immature and too strong. Jason commented again, pointing out Loken's previous flaws. Generally, the attacks of wood spiritual masters are mainly based on entangling, and rely on the powerful vitality of the wood spiritual power to exhaust the opponent's combat effectiveness, but your attacks are extremely strong. This is because your wood spiritual power is the ultimate wood spirit, and you can also exert powerful combat effectiveness. But if you add softness to the hardness, the effect of inserting the message will be even better. Loken nodded heavily. He was greatly shocked by the strong fighting power that Jason had shown previously. He was also a 7th level advanced imperial spiritual master, but Jason was so much stronger than him, which made him sigh with emotion. As expected of master, he is really strong. Just as Luo Kuan was filled with emotion, Jason suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. In the sky, a stream of light suddenly appeared from a distance, then flew over the Lokuan training ground like lightning, and slowly landed. Lokuan, what happened earlier? This was an old man with a gray beard. As soon as he came down, he spoke with questions. This person was Dean Merrill of the Royal Academy of Spiritual Martial Arts. When he was in the office earlier, he heard about Lokuan's duel with Clooney tomorrow. He was immediately ready to come and ask Lokuan about the specific situation, but suddenly he felt there was a strong spiritual energy wave coming from here. It seemed that two people were fighting. He didn't know what happened. He was worried about Lokuan. He rushed here as quickly as possible, but only saw two people. The young man stood here. Dean Merrill, this is my master. My master and I were having a discussion earlier. Lokuan spoke up immediately when he saw the old man. Your master? Merrill couldn't help but show a hint of surprise on his face, and then his sharp eyes fell on Jason. Boom! The old man's eyes were like the vast night sky, constantly rotating, full of a sense of depth, as if he was about to be sucked into it, and the terrifying spiritual consciousness suddenly enveloped Jason, thinking to see something. Facing the old man's prying eyes, Jason had a smile on his face. His expression was pale and unconcerned. He didn't seem to be intimidated by Merrill's powerful spiritual consciousness at all. He said, "Old sir, it seems that you are spying on others like this. It's a bit too much." Huh? There was a trace of surprise in Merrill's eyes. With his 8th level peak strength, he could tell at a glance that this black-haired young man, like Lokuan, was only a 1st level advanced the Emperor's spiritual master, but under his 8th level peak spiritual consciousness, he remained unmoved at all, and even gave Merrill a vague feeling, making him eat you incomparably. Merrill withdrew his spiritual consciousness and said aloud, "I'm Merrill, the president of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. I wonder who you are." Jason, a core disciple of the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower, and the president of the Rondo Province Spiritual Medicine Master Union. Jason smiling lightly. What? Merrill said in shock, and then his eyes fell on Lokuan, and he said solemnly, "Lokuan, you have been unwilling to accept my proposal to join the Holy Land of the Empire. could it be that for this reason? Reject the proposal to join the Holy Land of the Empire? Not far away, Jason couldn't help but glance at Loken. The Holy Land of the Empire, what does it mean to a descendant of the Salem Empire? Jason would not refuse. Clearly, he did not expect that Luoquan would actually refuse such a thing in order to wait for him. Loken nodded. Dean Merrill, I decided 4 years ago to follow my master in this life and not join any force. Now that my master is here, Dean Merrill, I am afraid that I will have to leave the royal spirit in the near future. The Martial Arts Academy has applied for graduation. Loken is extremely grateful to the dean for his love for Lokuan over the past 2 years. This kindness will always be remembered by Loken. The reason why Loken has been able to graduate from the 7th level to the lower level in the past 2 years is the Imperial Spiritual Master has been promoted to the 7th level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master and possesses such terrifying combat power. Dean Merrill's guidance and the granting of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy Library Pass to Loken are also closely related to this. On the practice ground, Merrill looked at Loken with a firm expression, and then looked at Jason not far away. Knowing Loken's character, Merrill could only sigh and said, now that you have made up your mind, I won't say anything more. I just want to say at this point, Merrill's expression suddenly became extremely serious and solemn. Loken, you are a subject of the Salem Empire. I hope no matter what achievements you have in the future, do not betray the Empire. Moreover, if you change your mind, you can come to the Academy to see me at any time. Regardless of whether you are still a student of the Academy or not, I will always reserve your place for you. After Merrill finished speaking, he slowly lifted into the air and flew into the distance. At the same time, his voice came from afar. I already know about the duel between you and Clooney. Before graduation, you were still a student of our Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. Tomorrow, I will go to the duel field in person to cheer you up. Remember, don't give us the Royal Spiritual Martial Arts Academy. The Martial Arts Academy is in disgrace. In this battle, we must win without losing. As the voice fell, Merrill's figure also disappeared from sight. Dean Merrill, thank you for your care and guidance over the past 2 years. Looking at the empty sky, Loken bowed deeply. After this battle, Jason also fully understood Loken's strength. That night, he called Loken to his tang room. Master. In the room, Loken stood respectfully in front of Jason. Loken, although I have full confidence in you in tomorrow's duel, but just in case, I have something here, you can take it. Jason said. After saying that, he waved his left hand, and suddenly, a blue spiritual staff with a huge blue spiritual crystal on its head and exuding a terrifying spiritual power appeared in Jason's hand. This is a high-grade Earth-level spiritual weapon. It's called the 10,000 Wood Emperor Staff. I got it in the Spiritual Medicine Master's Tower. You can get familiar with it and it should improve your combat power a lot. Jason he opened his mouth and said that this Wanmu Emperor Staff was originally obtained from Gama, a core disciple of the Spiritual Medicine Master Pagoda and an 8th-level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master. Nagama was practicing the Aoki Emperor technique of the wood system. This Wanmu Emperor Staff, the staff, was also a wooden spiritual weapon. Jason kept it and gave it to Loken. The 10,000 Wood Emperor Staff, a top-grade Earth-level spiritual weapon? Luoquan's heart twitched fiercely, and his eyes instantly widened. There are also these. Jason waved his hand again, and several ancient scrolls exuding wood spiritual power suddenly appeared in his hands. These are several scrolls of high-grade wood techniques at the moon level. You can take them for reference. Of course, don't rush to practice now, wait until your duel is over, and then study it slowly. These were all specially exchanged by Jason for Loken before leaving the elixir tower. Master, Luoquan's eyes suddenly turned red. This familiar scene reminded him of the time when he was in the family 4 years ago. At that time, Jason gave him 10 bottles of 6th-grade high-grade wood vitality potion to treat the wood spirit body, and even gave him he had a roll of low-grade moon-level skills and asked him to practice them. It was precisely because of these that Loken was able to reach where he is now. Now, Jason took out these things again, leaving Loken not knowing what to say. And before Loken could express his emotions, Jason waved his left hand again, and suddenly, a bottle of elixir exuding astonishing wood spiritual power fluctuations appeared in front of Loken. This is a bottle of elixir that exudes strong fluctuations of wood-based spiritual power. Although it is night, this bottle of elixir is constantly shining with a soul-stirring and magnificent light under the illumination of the spiritual lamp in the house, imprinting the entire room into a piece of blue, beautiful. You have just been promoted to the 7th level of Senior Imperial Spirit Master not long ago. Your strength has not been consolidated yet. You have just entered the 7th level of Advanced Level. This is a bottle of 7th level high-grade Wood Emperor potion. Take it and take it immediately. It can absorb your body. The wood spiritual power has been raised to an extreme, truly reaching the top of the 7th level high-level Imperial Spiritual Master. Jason said, with these, even if you fight against an 8th level low-level Emperor Spiritual Master tomorrow, it is also a sure win. Master, holding these things in his hands, and in front of Jason, Loken choked up. The 7th grade high-grade Imperial Elixir, Loken knew how precious it was. In fact, whether it is the 10,000 Wood Emperor Staff, a high-grade Earth-level spiritual weapon, or a high-grade Moon-level skill, they are all extremely precious on the mainland. Such things, in some big families, are heirloom treasures that have been passed down for countless generations, but Jason gave it to Lokuan like this, which made Lokuan feel moved. Okay. Jason patted Luokuan on the shoulder, you are so big, but you are still like a child. Tomorrow, show your true strength and let those guys in the Imperial capital take a good look at what my Jason's apprentice is like. How excellent. In the room, Loken nodded heavily and stopped crying all of a sudden. His eyes were wide open, but he was firm. After returning to his room, Loken immediately took the Wood Emperor potion given by Jason, and then fell completely into in the process of cultivation. He constantly refines and absorbs the powerful spiritual power that penetrates into his body. This practice lasted a whole night. When Loken opened his eyes the next morning, the power in his body had reached a peak. It was originally just the 7th level advanced spiritual power, but now it was as sticky as the lotion is generally extremely thick, and with every movement of his hands, powerful spiritual power is constantly revealed, and the whole person's strength has more than doubled compared to before. A 7th level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master, or a 7th level Peak Imperial Spiritual Master, this is Loken's current status. With the help of Jason's 7th level high-grade Wood Emperor potion, the spiritual power in Loken's body has reached the peak of the 7th level Emperor Spirit Master. Now, the only thing he needs to do is to improve his understanding of the laws of the wood system. Then he broke through the shackles of the 7th level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master and advanced to the 8th level Imperial Spiritual Master. This may be difficult for ordinary people. At that time, Jason believed that with Loken's talent, this day would not come long ago. In the year of Sku of the spiritual god calendar, it is noon on the first day of the month. In 2 hours, it will be time for Loken and Clooney to duel, and the people in the entire Imperial capital rush to the duel venue in excitement. The Imperial capital duel ground is the largest duel ground in the entire Salem Empire and can accommodate hundreds of thousands of spectators to watch the duel. Some large-scale competitions in the Empire usually use the duel ground. Although the duel between Loken and Clooney only spread throughout the Imperial capital yesterday afternoon, and it has only been a full day since now, the hundreds of thousands of seats in the duel arena were sold out early. It is true that Loken and Clooney are too famous, and the Imperial capital has not had a decent duel for a long time. It is rare for one to appear, which naturally attracts the attention of countless people. And today, it was not only the people from the Imperial capital who came for the duel, but also some people from nearby cities who got the news and also rushed all night to watch the duel between the two. Following the flow of people, Jason and Loken also came to the duel arena at noon, and then entered the room arranged inside the duel arena. Loken silently adjusted his state, becoming familiar with the things in his hands. 10,000 wood emperor staff. As the duel time came bit by bit, Jason woke up Loken, who was adjusting silently. The duel time is almost here, let's go out. Loken nodded, stood up, and followed Jason out of the lounge. The central arena of the duel arena is 100 feet long and 100 feet wide. It is paved with hard anti-spiritual stones that have withstood the wind and frost without decaying. When they were first laid, these anti-spiritual stones were soaked in special spiritual liquid and could withstand extremely powerful attacks. There are densely packed seats around the duel arena, with a small area on the south and north sides reserved for the relatives and friends of the duelists to watch. And right in front of the duel arena, there is a row of extremely luxurious seats, which are the seats that are presided over by half. Jason and Loken walked out of the passage below, and what greeted them was the dense crowds of hundreds of thousands of people seated on all sides of the duel arena, as well as the roaring noise that reached into the sky. After all, Jason had seen the big world and participated in the mainland elite competition. He had no special feelings about this kind of scene. However, Luo Kuan was shocked all of a sudden. He felt extremely shocked in his heart. The blood in his body felt like burning, it suddenly rushed to his head. There are so many people. Loken couldn't help but tremble. Don't be nervous. Today, this is your stage. Did you see that there are hundreds of thousands of spectators here? They will cheer for you after the meeting. Don't feel pressure and show your true strength. Jason shot, he put his hand on Loken's shoulder and spoke out words of encouragement. Yeah. Loken nodded, and then walked to his seat with Jason. On the opposite side of Bruni's seat, many people from the Downey family also arrived. There were many people on Bruni's side, and the seats were packed tightly. Most of them were members of the Downey family. Even the patriarch of the Downey family, Bruni's father, Patriarch Matt, also came over, and there were many young people. Young people. Jason could see that those young people were very strong, and they were obviously disciples of the Imperial Holy Land. Across the huge arena, the two sides' eyes collided coldly, sparks erupting from both sides. At this time, the entire stand also let out a huge cheer. It was obvious that the appearance of both parties participating in the duel made everyone excited. The game time was finally approaching. When both players were ready, from the backstage of the duel arena, a cyan figure suddenly flew over the duel arena, and then landed in the center of the duel arena. Wow! The entire audience in the auditorium shouted excitedly. This was an old man with a green robe. As soon as he landed on the duel field, he said loudly, "Everyone, be quiet." The loud voice, like thunder, instantly spread throughout the duel field, and the hundreds of thousands of spectators in the duel field also heard. Everyone fell silent and looked at the green-haired old man in the center of the duel field. I think everyone can't wait, right? On the duel field, the green-haired old man said with a smile, "To be honest, I am also looking forward to it." The two protagonists of today's duel both have great influence in the Empire. One of them is Clooney of the Downey family, the #1 disciple in the Holy Land of the Empire, and the other is a young hero from Chi'er province, the #1 genius of the Empire's Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. What makes them even better is that the two of them are both our 7th level high-level Imperial Spiritual Masters, so who is the stronger one among them? The green-haired old man laughed. Everyone will see it later. But before that, I will introduce the 3 judges who will host the competition today. First of all, we have invited the Dean of the Imperial Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, the 8th level Mr. Merrill, the Senior Imperial Spiritual Master. The green-haired old man said loudly. I saw an old man with gray hair walking out of a side passage, and then came directly to the rostrum and sat down. This old man was exactly the one Jason saw at the training ground of Lokuan Villa yesterday. Old man. As soon as Merrill appeared, the entire fighting arena seemed to go crazy, and countless spectators cheered loudly. The second one is Lord Brat, an elder of the Holy Land of the Empire and an 8th level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master. The green-haired old man spoke again. An old man in a golden robe was seen walking out of a side passage, then flew directly to the right side of the subrostrum and sat down. The appearance of this old man also caused countless spectators in the entire duel field to cheer, and the deafening sound went straight into the sky. The green-haired old man's face was full of smiles. Today's third judge is the master of the Imperial Academy of Spiritual Medicine Master. As an 8th-level intermediate Imperial Spiritual Master and a 7th-level Senior Spiritual Medicine Master, Master Balandayan. Now, let us invite Master Balandayan to appear. As Balandayan's name appeared, the entire duel field went crazy, and countless spectators shouted excitedly. The roaring shouts were more shocking than the previous voices of Meryl and Brat. Unlike Meryl and Brat, who are 8th-level Senior Imperial Spiritual Masters, Balandayan is only an 8th-level Intermediate Imperial Spiritual Master, but his status as a 7th-level Senior Imperial Spiritual Master makes all the people crazy. This is the influence and status of spiritual medicine masters on the mainland, which is far beyond what ordinary spiritual masters can match. Master Balandayan? Jason's eyes showed a hint of surprise in his seat. He did not expect that the third judge would be Balandayan. What surprised Jason even more was that Balandayan's strength. When Jason saw Balandayan in Elutaba's mansion 4 years ago, Balandayan was only an 8th-level low-level Imperial Spiritual Master and a 7th-level Intermediate Elixir Master. But now he has not seen him for 4 years. However, Balandayan was promoted to the 8th-level Intermediate Imperial Spiritual Master and the 7th-level Advanced Imperial Spiritual Master. What Jason didn't know was that it was precisely because of his exchanges with Jason in the Chi'er province that he learned many things about elixirs. Master Balandayan had great strength after returning to the imperial capital. Rapid changes. Under everyone's expectant gazes, an old man slowly walked out of the passage. His expression was full of wisdom, and he was wearing a simple robe. He came directly to the center of the podium and sat down. This person was none other than Balandayan, who had a deep friendship with Jason. After Master Belinda sat down, Meryl and Brat greeted Balandayan with smiles. Balandayan also nodded to greet the two of them with a smile on his face. Immediately, the three of them sat upright and looked towards the duel field, while Master Balandayan looked towards where Loken was. As for Loken's identity as Jason's disciple, Balandayan knew about it 4 years ago. Otherwise, Balandayan would not have helped Loken at the door of the Guras family. It was because of his relationship that Dep of the Guras family did not kill Loken. Originally, as the Imperial Palace Elixir Master and the Imperial Elixir Academy Master, this duel had nothing to do with him. However, after he heard about the incident yesterday when he was preparing the elixir in the Elixir Academy, he went to find it. He went to the duel field and offered to serve as a judge for this duel, because he was afraid that Loken would be powerless in the imperial capital and the duel would be unfair. Since a master like Belinda recommended himself, the duel field would naturally not reject him, hence the previous scene. However, when Master Balandayan's eyes fell on Loken's seat, he was stunned for a moment, and then there was an inexplicable look of surprise in his eyes. I saw a young man with long black hair sitting next to Loken on the seat on Loken's side. His eyes met Master Balandayan's, with a smile on his face. Nod slightly. Master Jace at this moment, Master Balandayan's heart seemed to be in a storm. He never expected that he would meet Jason here. In the past 4 years, the reason why Master Balandayan has been promoted from the 7th level Intermediate Elixir Master to the 7th level Senior Elixir Master has a lot to do with Jason's guidance in Chi'er province. Now, it is actually Master Balandayan was not surprised to see Jason again in the imperial capital. However, Master Balandayan is a person who has experienced great storms after all. Although he was pleasantly surprised, his face quickly regained his composure, nodded to Jason, and then looked at the green-haired old man on the duel field. However, his earlier surprised look was still seen by Dean Merrill and Elder Brat. Both of them followed the gaze of Master Balandayan, but they only saw Loken and a young man, Jing. Sitting quietly on the seat, there is nothing special about it. This made both of them doubtful. Elder Brat was naturally confused and didn't know why. Dean Merrill, who had met Jason, was confused about the relationship between Jason and Master Ballanday. Otherwise, why did Master Ballanday react after seeing him, would be so shocked? On the duel field, the green-haired old man looked at Master Ballandayan on the judge's bench. Master Ballandayan nodded to him. The green-haired old man immediately smiled and said, "I think everyone can't wait. Right? Haha, I can't wait too, so I won't talk too much here. Now, here are the two opponents for this showdown. First of all, Bruni, the first disciple of the Holy Land of the Empire, is the one who proposed the challenge. Bruni! 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 The cheers were like thunder and the entire auditorium cheered. Countless spectators roared to vent their excitement. The sky-shaking noise resounded in the duel field like rumbling thunder, rising straight into the sky and echoing in the clouds. Amidst the cheers, Bruni, who had blonde hair and wore a golden spiritual master's robe with a long sword hanging at his waist, stood up from his seat and instantly turned into a golden afterimage, appearing directly on the duel field. Bruni! Bruni! As Bruni appeared, many people among the hundreds of thousands of spectators shouted. There were obviously many people supporting Bruni. After all, he came from the highest holy place in the empire, and he was the children of the imperial capital or the pride of the imperial capital people. Quiet. The green-haired old man smiled and said, "The next person to appear is Luo Kuan, a genius from Chi'er province and known as the #1 genius at the Imperial Academy of Spiritual Martial Arts." Lokuan. Luo Kuan. Kun. Many spectators in the audience also shouted. Among them, the loudest shouters were the students from the Empire's Royal Spiritual Martial Academy behind Loken. Loken was one of them, which naturally gave them a huge sense of involvement. Moreover, in the past 2 years, Loken's unswerving persistence in felt has given him an excellent reputation in many circles in the imperial capital. Although his supporters are not as many as Bruni's, they still have many. Phew. Amidst the cheers of countless spectators, Loken slowly rose into the sky, and then fell to the side of the duel, facing Bruni far away. The #1 genius in the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy? Oh. A sneer appeared on Bruni's lips. "I will let you know that in front of me, Bruni, you, the #1 genius, are nothing at all." Lokuan's expression was indifferent, and he just looked up at the seats behind the rostrum. That is where the VIP seats of the entire duel field are located. Those who can sit there are all people with status in the empire. Many of them are members of some big families in the empire, and members of the Gura's family also came to watch the duel. Depp is also among them. Felt, I, Ichihiro, will defeat that Bruni and let your family know about my strength and talent, Lokun. Lokun said secretly in his heart. Snort. Seeing that Loken ignored him at all, Bruni immediately snorted and said nothing. On the duel field, Loken and Bruni faced each other from a distance, both of them waiting for the sound of announcement. At this moment, okay, since both players are ready, now I announce the voice of the green-haired old man in a loud voice, this battle begins. After the words fell, he flew down to the duel field. After entering the passage to the side, only Loken and Bruni were left on the duel field, facing each other, with sparks in their eyes. Bruni looked at Loken coldly and pulled out the long sword from his waist. Loken turned his right hand and took out the 10,000 wood emperor staff. The entire audience fell completely silent. Everyone watched this showdown of geniuses with their eyes wide open, for fear of missing a single detail. Huh. In the blink of an eye, Bruni disappeared, and at the same time, his figure suddenly appeared in front of Loken. A golden and powerful spiritual power surged out from his body surface, and his eyes exploded. Shooting out a dazzling light, the terrifying 7th-level advanced spiritual power was condensed, aimed at Loken's location, and struck down with a fierce sword. Die! Bruni shouted loudly. In the roar, the shocking golden spiritual element descended. For a moment, the whole world seemed to have turned into a sea of golden elements, covering the whole world with a terrifying power. The pressure shocked everyone. Golden secret of the golden sword slash. At this moment, countless golden sword shadows emerged in the void, and then disappeared into the long sword stabbed in Bruni's hand like lightning. The long sword in Bruni's hand suddenly bloomed. Thousands of feet of golden light came out and condensed into a huge golden sword, which was aimed at Loken and slashed down. Rumble. A deafening roar sounded. Bruni slashed down with his sword, cutting open the void. The surrounding air exploded, revealing dark space cracks at the edge of the golden sword. Waves of energy storms formed, covering Loken. At the beginning of the duel, Bruni showed off his amazing stunts without any hesitation, vowing to kill Loken down in the duel with just one sword strike. Facing Clooney's powerful attack, Loken's face did not change at all. He did not retreat at all, but just blocked the 10,000-wood Emperor staff in front of him. A dazzling green light bloomed from the 10,000-wood Emperor staff, forming a huge shield in front of him. Misty green light was released from the shield. On the surface of the shield, mysterious, obscure, and complicated, the continuous circulation of spiritual symbols and spiritual patterns represents the laws of the wood system, locking the world and remaining unmoved. Boom! In an instant, the huge golden sword and the cyan shield collided heavily. Astonishing explosions continued to sound. The golden sword displayed by Bruni suddenly collapsed and turned into a cloud of fire all over the sky. Golden light spots dissipated in the sky. What? Bruni suddenly exclaimed, and his figure suddenly retreated. But how could Loken give him this opportunity? As he waved the 10,000-wood Emperor staff in his hand, the cyan shield suddenly dissipated. At the same time, he aimed at Bruni and swung it away. Boom! As soon as the spiritual staff came out, endless cyan light bloomed in an instant, and it shrouded Bruni like lightning. The terrifying wood spiritual power was rampant in the world, and thousands of cyan rays where the light was overwhelming, pouring towards Bruni's location from all directions. One of the mysteries of the wood element, the joy of wood. Luokuan's mouth came out with a cold voice, and the shocking wood element descended. For a moment, the whole world seemed to have turned into a sea of wood elements, covering a world. Huge bursts of air were produced around Bruni, and countless wood-type auroras crisscrossed the area. Wherever they went, the air continued to ripple, seeming to tear the void apart, blocking all Bruni's movements. "Ah, break it for me!" Bruni shouted suddenly, and thousands of golden lights bloomed from his body. A terrifying spiritual power burst out, and a bright and huge golden sword light burst out from the long sword in Bruni's hand. When it came out, dazzling light penetrated the heaven and earth, and the amazing spiritual power continued to condense, aiming at Loken's location and striking at him angrily. Humph! On the duel field, Luokuan snorted coldly. The spiritual power in his body surged wildly. He pressed down the 10,000-wood Emperor staff again, and the wood spiritual power in the sky suddenly bloomed in a dazzling way. The green light collided heavily with the golden giant sword that penetrated the sky and the earth. Boom! Amidst the huge roar, the indestructible huge golden sword light shattered in an instant, turned into golden star points all over the sky, and dissipated in the air. In Bruni's horrified eyes, the sky was filled with cyan aurora. Without any pause, it struck Bruni hard. Pung! A dull sound like hitting leather resounded between heaven and earth, and the violent collision of spiritual power and flesh made the hearts of all the spectators in the duel field tremble. Blood was thrown in the sky. In everyone's surprised eyes, Bruni, a 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master, was severely hit by the terrifying cyan aurora released by Loken, like a meteor falling from the sky. It hit the ground of the duel field heavily. Rocks splashed, the ground cracked, and terrifying cracks spread. A huge pit suddenly appeared on the duel arena paved with anti-spiritual stones, and Bruni lay at the bottom of the pit, vomiting blood, with a horrified expression on his face. The golden spiritual master's robe on his body was in pieces, and there were dozens of scars on his body caused by the cyan aurora, and blood kept flowing out. Dead silence, terrible silence. Lokun's blow stunned everyone present. Everyone looked at the expressionless Lokun standing on the duel field, and no one dared to say anything. They never thought that this game would end so quickly. The two of them fought for just a moment, with 2 moves, only 2 moves. Luo Kuan immediately defeated Clooney, who was also a 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master. Defeat made everyone unable to believe their eyes. If Clooney was just an ordinary 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master, it might not be a big deal, but Clooney is the #1 disciple in the Holy Land of the Empire? First disciple, what does this mean? In the Holy Land of the Empire, although there are not many talented disciples of the 7th-level senior imperial spiritual master level, there are definitely not few. And since Clooney has the title of the first disciple, he must have been selected from countless masters of the same level, but now, such a first disciple was defeated by Luo Kun in 2 moves. While everyone was shocked, they were almost unable to accept it in their hearts. Before the duel, all the spectators present had imagined countless possibilities, but there was absolutely no such thing as what was happening on the field now. On the seat, Jason had a smile on his face. Before he arrived, Luoquan's strength was already able to fight against ordinary 8th-level, low-level Emperor spiritual masters. After he arrived, he had the Wanmu Emperor. With the staff, and with the help of his own Wood Emperor potion, Luoquan, who has reached the peak of advanced level from the beginning, has at least doubled his strength compared to before. If so, he still can't defeat Na Clooney. It's really hard to see it's a ghost. The #1 disciple in the Holy Land is nothing more than that. In the silent duel field, looking at Clooney covered in blood in the pit, Loken's face was calm and he spoke indifferently, then he looked up at the members of the Gira's family. The VIP seat where he was turned and left. Papa. The silence in the duel field lasted for a moment, and was finally broken by a burst of thunderous applause and cheers. Although everyone was unexpected by Loken's strength, it was this unexpected ending left a deep impression on them. In particular, the students of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy burst into earth-shattering cheers, cheering for Loken's victory. In the cheers of the audience, the Matt clan leader of the Downey family and others in the seats on Bruni's side had extremely ugly expressions. Originally, they didn't take today's showdown to heart at all, and just regarded it as a way to improve the Downey family. Prestige was a good thing, but the result was that the Downey family was embarrassed. As for the disciples in the surrounding Holy Land, their expressions were even more gloomy. As disciples of the Holy Land of the Empire, each of them is the pride of heaven. No matter where they go, they are admired by thousands of people. But now, Bruni, who is the first disciple of the Holy Land, has actually lost to a disciple of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy. Students, making them feel immense shame. In the deep pit of the duel field, Bruni stopped the bleeding wounds on his body, looked at Loken's retreating back, and felt the cheers of countless spectators in the surrounding auditorium, but a ferocious look suddenly flashed across his eyes. The color of spite. Phew! He pressed his palms to the ground suddenly, and his whole body flew up instantly, turning into a golden stream of light, which shot straight towards Loken, and the long sword in his hand flew out strangely, as if he was coming out of a cave. The snake, at an extremely weird angle and speed, pierced Loken's back vest. The sudden change suddenly caused countless people in the duel field to scream in shock. Many people's faces were filled with horror and they wanted to speak out to warn. However, Bruni's speed was too fast. Before the countless spectators present could shout, after making a sound, the long sword in Bruni's hand came quietly behind Loken. Tisk! The golden light accurately hit Loken's back vest under the horrified gazes, and penetrated directly, bringing up a pool of blood. Ah! Everyone exclaimed. Did Loken, who was so powerful just now, die like this? Blood was floating in the air, but Loken's figure did not fall, but gradually became blurred. When Afterimage saw this scene, Clooney was immediately horrified and stepped back while looking not far away. There, a cyan figure slowly appeared, and at the same time he looked at Clooney with cold eyes. It was Loken, who barely managed to avoid a sword attack, but blood was constantly flowing out of his right arm. Clooney's previous sneak attack was too fast. Even if he noticed it in time and dodged, he was still hit by the sword on his right arm. It was only then that a burst of suppressed exclamations erupted from the audience, followed immediately by a chorus of abuse. All the audience were trembling because of the thrilling scene before, and they were also extremely angry for Bruni's character. Everyone could see that the previous duel was over. After Loken injured Bruni, he spared his life and did not take any heavy blows, but instead of admitting defeat, Bruni used such a despicable sneak attack, which made all the audience look down upon him. On the duel field, Loken's expression was cold, and the wood spiritual power in his body continued to flow, slowly healing the injury on his arm. His eyes were full of killing intent as he looked at Bruni not far away. "You gave this life to yourself. You have no one to blame." A soft voice instantly reached Bruni's ears. Before he could react, Loken suddenly moved across from him. He aimed at Bruni and waved the 10,000 wood emperor staff in his hand. Boom! An astonishing coercion descended from the sky, and the 8th level wood spiritual core at the head of the Wanmu emperor staff suddenly lit up at this moment, blooming with a dazzling brilliance, and a green wood seemed to connect the heaven and the earth. The energy column appeared all of a sudden, then aimed at Bruni's location and rushed towards him. Boom! 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 The air rippled out, and the void was shattered, constantly cracking under the sweep of the cyan light pillar. Behind the beam of light, Loken looked like a god in charge of life. His cold and emotionless eyes stared at Bruni, causing a chill of fear to spread in Bruni's heart. Ah! Facing the fear of death, Bruni roared. His long golden hair flew up, his eyes instantly turned golden, and all the golden spiritual elements in the air it poured into his body like crazy. Dash, the dozens of wounds on Bruni's body that had just stopped bleeding suddenly burst open, and blood spurted out, but he was completely unaware that the terrifying golden spiritual power continued to flow through the meridians in his body. It moved around, stimulating every acupuncture point in his body, and unleashed the strongest attack at all costs. Annihilation of the golden mystical sword. Thousands of golden streams of light continued to swim in front of Bruni, and then together with Bruni's whole body, they turned into a golden solid sword. Ah, die, I am the number one in the Salem Empire. Imperial Spiritual Master. Bruni looked crazy, his golden pupils were bloodshot, and he roared. The golden giant sword, which was more than 10 feet high and 1 foot wide, slashed down like a pillar of heaven. Boom! Wherever the giant golden sword went, the void shattered, and cracks appeared. Then the cyan light beams used by Luo Kuan suddenly collided together, trying to block Luo Kuan's attack. The mantis is acting like a chariot. Lo Kuan made a cold voice, and sent forward the 10,000 wood emperor staff in his hand. The cyan light beam that was originally as thick as a bucket suddenly expanded several times. Crack! The metal spiritual power elements collapsed, and the sound of breaking bamboo resounded. The cyan beam of light released by Loken broke through the sky and impacted heavily on the golden sword formed by Bruni. Boom! A deafening roar sounded, and everyone saw Loken defeating the enemy with one stick. His tall and majestic body rushed forward, and the golden giant sword condensed by Bruni with all his strength suddenly appeared like fragile glass. The cracks then suddenly shattered. Die! Loken broke Bruni's attack with one blow. Without stopping, he waved the 10,000 wood emperor staff again, sweeping out a dazzling cyan light and rushing straight towards Bruni. Stop! Seeing Loken's attack, Bruni's seat suddenly heard an angry roar, and at the same time an earthy yellow stream of light exploded like a meteor across the sky. What shot out was Bruni's father, Matt, the patriarch of the Downey family and an 8th level intermediate imperial spiritual master. His eyes were red, and he rushed towards Bruni crazily, trying to save Bruni from Loken. Terrifying spiritual power emanated from his body. Before the person arrived, the elemental barrier of the earth element suddenly covered the space. As an 8th-level intermediate imperial spiritual master, how fast is Matt? In the blink of an eye, he was in the sky above the dual field. Just when he was about to block Bruni, he suddenly said, "Your Excellency, your behavior seems to be against the rules, right?" A clear voice said in the dual field. There was a sudden resounding sound, and at the same time a black stream of light burst out from Loken's seat, and instantly came to the sky above the dual field, blocking Matt's face. "Get out of my way." At this critical moment, Matt didn't care who the person in front of him was. He roared angrily, and the earth spiritual power in his body surged out. He aimed his palm at the black figure in front of him. Slap it hard. Boom. All the earth spiritual elements in this world went berserk in an instant, and the terrifying emperor-level pressure dissipated. Countless earth elements condensed into a huge earth element palm in the void, aiming at the figure was swept away at once. Silently, the giant palm was shot out, and strange ripples spread out in all directions, with the giant palm as the center. Wherever the ripples touched, the void collapsed. Facing the furious blow of the 6th-level intermediate emperor spiritual master, the black figure had no idea of evading it. He aimed at the earth element handprint displayed by Matt and punched out. Boom! Thunder suddenly sounded out of thin air. Amidst the violent thunder, the black figure's fist hit the huge earth-yellow elemental handprint heavily. Buzz! Like a stone falling onto the lake, the black figure's fist seemed to tremble slightly, and the earth element handprints produced by Matt were like ripples on the disturbed lake surface. Then it continued to tremble and completely shattered into pieces. One punch, silent. But the elemental handprints that Matt had condensed shattered. Terrifying murderous intent suddenly enveloped Matt, preventing him from taking action. Just like this pause, on the dual field, the cyan light beam released by Loken swept across Bruni's body. Pung! Bruni's golden spiritual master's robe shattered in an instant, and he was thrown up high. Blood spurted out from his mouth, and then he fell heavily on the ring, and the hard ring there were cracks created. On the ring, Bruni was covered in blood, and the bones on his body were broken countless times. His body was constantly pumping, and countless blood arrows spewed out from the exposed wounds and fell to the ground, which was shocking. Pathetic. In the sky, Matt couldn't help but let out an angry roar. He ignored the black figure blocking him, rushed to the ring like lightning, and picked up Bruni in the dual field. Visit quickly. When he felt that there was still a trace of breath left in Bruni's body, Matt felt happy at first, but then his face turned gloomy again. All the meridians in Bruni's body were severed by Loken's previous blow. In other words, even if Bruni's injuries were cured, he would probably only be a cripple. The unscrupulous, PS-like murderous aura suddenly emitted from Matt. He raised his head and turned his cold eyes to the figure in the sky. If this black-haired young man hadn't blocked him, how could he have been too late to save Bruni from Narrakan? "Who is your Excellency?" Matt said coldly, his heart filled with anger and the intention to kill Jason. "It doesn't matter who I am, but your actions are a bit unfair. Before the duel was over, you rushed to the duel field privately in an attempt to interfere with the duel." Jason had a sneer on his face. "I finally know why Bruni attacked others before. It turns out that this is the tradition of your Downey family. Everyone is so despicable." Regarding Bruni's previous actions, Jason's heart was also full of anger. If Loken hadn't dodged quickly, he would have died under the opponent's sneak attack. Just now, Matt wanted to intervene in the duel between the two, so how could Jason watch it? The confrontation between the two people immediately made the whole stand boil. Everyone looked at Jason in the sky curiously. Jason had previously defeated the attack of the leader of the Matt clan with one punch, making everyone feel filled with excitement. Excited, but also extremely curious about Jason's identity. Unfair? Patriarch Matt's eyes were full of resentment, and his whole body slowly rose up. He looked at Jason coldly. In the previous situation, my son Bruni had no way to fight back. With such strength, Loken actually killed me and almost killed my son. Haha, you actually said I was unfair? Chief Matt laughed maniacally, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Almost killed your son? In the sky, Jason shook his head. It's a pity. With such a despicable character, your son was not killed. It's a pity that this person will stay here. The world is also rubbish, worthless rubbish. You are seeking death. Chief Matt roared angrily, boundless anger rising from his heart. He was completely angry this time, and he could no longer bear it. Terrifying spiritual power burst out from his body, and an earthy yellow elemental barrier suddenly enveloped the surroundings, wrapping Jason in it. In the earth element barrier, the boundless earth elements were aimed at Jason and oppressed him, trying to restrain Jason's actions. Wow! This move by Patriarch Matt immediately made the entire audience in the stands completely excited. This Patriarch Matt is going to take action against the young people. Who is Patriarch Matt? That was the patriarch of the Downey family, an 8th-level intermediate imperial spiritual master. And where was the black-haired young man? Although no one knew his identity and strength, the previous scene of the black-haired young man breaking the elemental handprint of Patriarch Matt with a punch in the middle of the duel made it clear to the audience that this black-haired young man was very likely to be one of the same. An 8th-level Emperor, spiritual master. The battle between two 8th-level Emperor, spiritual masters, was really exciting. Why, you still want to attack me? Above the duel field, feeling the earth elemental barrier that was constantly oppressing him, Jason's face was calm and he looked at Patriarch Matt coldly. Attacking you? Huh, young man, what, are you afraid? When you stopped me earlier, weren't you very arrogant? I don't care who you are, if you are so arrogant, just let me discipline you on behalf of your elders. Patriarch Matt made a cold voice, and looked at Jason with hatred in his eyes. If Jason hadn't stopped him before, Bruni wouldn't have been beaten into a cripple by Loken. At this moment, Patriarch Matt all the resentment in his heart was thrown at Jason. Chief Matt, today is the duel between Clooney and Loken on the rostrum. Master Ballandain finally spoke, but before he could finish his words, he was hit by Matt break. Master Ballandain, now that the duel between Clooney and Loken is over, I admit defeat for Clooney. Now, it is the grudge between me and this kid. Matt's mouth was cold, and when he finished speaking, he was brazen. Take action. Pung. Matt took a step in the void and a monstrous breath rose from his body into the sky. Immediately, a huge shadow appeared behind him, emitting a misty earth-yellow light. He stepped in the void, one step tens of meters, and every step that landed would inevitably shatter a large area of void. His whole person exuded an extremely fierce murderous aura. The violent earth spiritual power was rolling around him like a raging wave, and the terrifying aura was like rolling wolf smoke penetrated the sky and the earth. As he ran, a huge earth-colored sword with astonishing power appeared in his hand. The terrifying pressure was released. Matt roared in his mouth and aimed at Jason and slashed it down. Destroy the Sword of Ending. Boom. The sky collapsed and the earth fell, and the sky fell. Matt slashed down with his sword, and earth-yellow spiritual power spread across the sky. A huge earth-based void sword that connected the sky and the earth was aimed at Jason's position and the pressure dropped. Amidst the buzzing and trembling, the air was squeezed and there was a continuous sound. Absolutely huge explosion sound. With this move of Matt's, dark streaks of earth-type spiritual energy fell down from the sky and the earth, and the mysterious effect of the earth-type laws on the 5 elements attributes reached an unpredictable level. All the spectators in the entire stand held their breath. This astonishing scene made all the spectators feel boundless shock in their hearts, and they looked at Jason above the duel field. Facing such a terrifying move from Matt, the black-haired young man seemed to be stunned and his body was suspended there quietly, motionless. In the horrified eyes of countless spectators, just when Matt's giant sword containing terrifying spiritual power was about to hit Jason, Jason suddenly moved in the sky. His right fist was suddenly raised, emitting a dazzling golden light, and then he aimed at Matt and punched him. Boom! The golden light broke through the void. Jason's right fist seemed to be slow, but strangely, it came first and struck the earth element giant sword struck by Matt. The secret of the 5 elements, Golden Emperor Fist. 2 golden rays of light burst out from Jason's eyes, and a cold voice like a god came out of his mouth. Boom! The fist and sword collided, and Matt's figure in the sky suddenly paused, with panic in his eyes. Then, the sword of end in his hand, which was condensed from Earth's spiritual elements and the mystery of the law, trembled. Explosions continued to erupt from the surface. Crack! 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 Countless cracks continued to appear from the earth element giant sword, and then with a bang, it suddenly turned into earth-yellow light spots all over the sky, completely shattered. In Matt's horrified eyes, Jason punched through his ending sword. The golden fist came to Matt in an instant and hit Matt's chest hard. Boom! Amid the explosion, the earth's spiritual shield on Matt's body exploded in almost the blink of an eye. There was an explosion, and the whole person was thrown heavily. His eyes were widened with shock and anger. A cloud of blood suddenly spurted out from his mouth. It was bloody and bright. Tay fell to the edge of the ring, his robe was completely stained red with blood, and he was in a state of disarray. Matt looked at Jason in horror. They were not at the same level at all. Jason definitely had the strength of an 8th-level senior emperor, spiritual master. A dignified 8th-level intermediate emperor, the spiritual master, the patriarch of the Downey family, the first-class family in the empire, was forced to do this with just one move. You alone want to teach me a lesson? Over the entire duel field, only Jason stood in the sky like a demon, his cold eyes looking at Matt indifferently. There were hundreds of thousands of spectators in the duel arena, and there was dead silence. In the sky, Jason stood proudly, his long black hair flying in the wind, and his gray-brown robes constantly swinging. Although he did not look majestic on the surface, in the minds of all the viewers, he left an indelible impression. Mark of. In one move, he defeated the 8th-level intermediate emperor, spiritual master, and the Matt clan leader of the Downey family. In addition, Jason's young appearance and fierce methods gave everyone a strong psychological impact. Hundreds of thousands of people were present. No one dared to speak out. Dead silence, deathly silence. Everyone looked blankly at Jason standing in the sky, and a doubt couldn't help but float in their hearts. Who is this young man? It was quiet, no one dared to speak for a while. At the edge of the ring, Matt stood there in embarrassment. He controlled the 8th-level intermediate earth spiritual power in his body, constantly repairing the wounds on his body and stopping the bleeding. His eyes looking at Jason were full of shock, anger, and fear. It is true that Jason's previous methods were too sharp and powerful, and he could not muster any will to resist. He could feel that although the aura of the black-haired young man did not seem to be very powerful, the aura he had blasted before that blow definitely had the power of an 8th-level senior emperor, spiritual master. In terms of strength, he is only an 8th-level intermediate emperor spiritual master, which is far behind his opponent. In the sky, Jason slowly fell and came to Loken's side. Master? Loken said respectfully. Master? Loken's title immediately shocked the entire audience. All the spectators buzzed with discussion, and their eyes fell on Dean Merrill on the rostrum. Everyone knows that this Loken is the #1 genius at the Royal Lingu Academy. In the academy, there are only teachers. Each teacher basically has to lead many students, but when did this Loken there is such a master? And he's still so young. What is even more curious is that no one in the Empire has ever heard of such a black-haired young man, which has aroused many doubts in the hearts of countless people. In the direction of the VIP seats, the end of the duel between Loken and Bruni also surprised some members of the Guras family, especially Depp. He still clearly remembered that when he was in Rainbow City more than 2 years ago, he came to propose marriage. Luoquan was just a 6th-level high-level spiritual master. He was thrown out of the city lord's palace by a single move from an 8th-level low-level emperor spiritual master. 2 years ago, when Loken tried to break into the Gura's family mansion after being promoted to the 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master, Depp spent a little effort to subdue Loken and beat him. Became seriously injured. Now 2 years have passed. Luo Kuan, who has been promoted from the 7th-level low-level imperial spiritual master to the 7th-level high-level imperial spiritual master, is known as the #1 genius of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy, but he has never made a move with anyone, and naturally he has not people know his true strength. Today's battle with Bruni allowed Loken to fully demonstrate his true strength, defeating the first disciple of the Empire's Holy Land with 2 moves. Such a talent cannot be summed up by just the word genius. What makes Depp even more confused is Jason's identity. Not counting people like Balandine who are familiar with Loken, he can be regarded as the person who knows the most about Loken in the entire imperial capital, but he has never heard of him. There is also such a powerful master. Master Jason. Dean Merrill spoke up at this time, but his voice seemed so abrupt in the entire duel field. Originally, most people's eyes fell on him, but now, the entire duel was completely focused on him. The eyes of everyone on the field were attracted. However, Dean Merrill still had a smile on his face. Although I knew that you were the core disciple of the Alchemist Tower and the president of the Londo Province's Alchemist Union, I never thought that your strength as a spiritual master would be so great. Outstanding, not inferior to you in elixir science at all. As soon as Dean Merrill's words came out, the entire audience in the duel field was stunned, and immediately, the entire duel field was filled with discussions. Even Master Balandane, who had known Jason for a long time, was stunned for a moment. He only knew that Jason was Loken's master, but he didn't expect that he had such an identity, and his name was not the Jace he knew at first, but Jason. As for Elder Brat in the Holy Land of the Empire, a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. The core disciple of the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower? Isn't the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower a gathering place for mainland spiritual medicine masters? Why is he so strong? President of the Spiritual Medicine Master Guild of Londo Province? Oh my god, this Jason looks like he is 20 at most. Really, they are all the presidents of the Elixir Guild in the same province? And it is also the province of London, one of the richest provinces in the Empire? I heard that the identity of the core disciples of the Elixir Tower is related to the Holy Spirit of our Empire. They are the same, but the Holy Son of our Empire is an Emperor Spiritual Master who must reach the lower level of the 8th level, while the core disciples of the Spiritual Medicine Master Tower are the Spiritual Medicine Masters who have reached the lower level of the 7th level. Could it be that Jason, who is so powerful, is still a 7th level Spiritual Master? The Elixir Master? Countless discussions surrounding Jason continued. The sudden appearance of Jason, his identity as a core disciple of the Elixir Master Tower, and the president of the Londo Province Elixir Masters Union, made everyone present. All the audience were shocked. You know, the strength that Jason showed before was at least that of an 8th level senior imperial spiritual master. This has been difficult for many people to accept. Now that his identity is revealed, he did not expect that he is still a 7th level elixir emperor, which makes many people almost unable to believe their ears. Invariably, many people compared Jason with his disciples from the Holy Land of the Empire. In the Holy Land of the Salem Empire, there are only 5 holy sons whose strength has reached the 8th level senior emperor spiritual master level, ranking among the top 5 in the Holy Land. And if they can defeat Matt with one move like Jason did before, the clan leader, and some powerful 8th level intermediate emperor spiritual master level saints can also do it. Based on this calculation, there are only a dozen or so people who can compete with Jason in terms of strength. Compared with the saint sons of more than a dozen empires, Jason is younger, and more importantly, Jason, who came from the Alchemist Tower and is the president of the Londo Province's Alchemist Union, is also a master of elixirs. In this way, Jason's talent is really powerful and scary. After checking Loken's injuries, Jason glanced coldly at Patriarch Matt in the distance and said calmly, "Chief Matt, right?" There was fear, anger, surprise, etc. on Matt's face. With many expressions on his face, his heart was filled with resentment towards Jason and Loken, but after knowing Jason's identity, he knew that there was nothing he could do to Jason today. Not to mention that in terms of strength, he was no match for Jason. Even if he was stronger than Jason, given his status, it would be difficult for him to take action against Jason. His identity as a core disciple of the spiritual medicine master Pagoda is too sensitive, and he is not something that the patriarch of a first-rate family can teach him at will. What do you want to say? Although there was fear in his heart, the dignity of the leader of the clan still made Matt courageous and looked at Jason coldly. Since it is an open duel, it should be fair. Don't rely on your own strength to take action at will and break the rules. Moreover, Bruni was beaten like this by Loken. He is not worthy of sympathy at all. Such a person of low character is simply a disgrace to your Downey family and even the Salem Empire. Even if he dies, he will be worthy of his death. After Jason finished speaking in a cold voice, he walked to his seat with Loken. Matt was scolded by Jason, and his face suddenly turned red and white, feeling immense shame. However, in terms of strength, he was not as good as Jason. He also knew that the truth was not on his side, so he could only rise. Blushing, he broke his teeth and swallowed. Everyone. At this time, the green-haired old man who presided over the competition also stepped onto the duel field, with a smile on his face. Everyone must be extremely excited to watch today's battle, haha. But everyone is here when we laugh. We in the duel arena will probably cry, because the arena in our duel arena was destroyed in this fierce competition. Hundreds of thousands of spectators looked at the cracked and huge everyone in the pit arena also laughed. They were indeed worth watching today's game. Not only did they see the duel between two peerless geniuses, but they also saw Jason's powerful strength. This move defeated the Matt Patriarch, especially Jason's special identity. I'm afraid they may not be able to see a spiritual medicine master tower in this life. Core disciple. As for the result of today's game, everyone should have no doubts. I will announce that the winner of today's showdown is Loken, the first genius of the Royal Spiritual Martial Academy from Cheer Province. Now, let us give our cheers to this genius who is only 23 years old, and thank him for bringing us such a wonderful duel. After the green-haired old man finished speaking, the whole place fell silent, and then wow! The stands were filled with excitement. Loken, Loken! The first Imperial Spiritual Master, the first Imperial Spiritual Master! Ho, roar! The whole audience burst into thunderous cheers. No one was spared. In this warm atmosphere, everyone in the audience, they were all instantly infected, and one by one stood up and roared crazily. After the battle, hundreds of thousands of spectators left the duel field one after another, and the news about the battle that took place in the duel field spread throughout the entire imperial capital like a whirlwind. After some spectators from cities near the imperial capital left, they also spread the news about the war. Loken defeated Clooney, the first disciple of the Holy Land, with 2 moves, and Jason defeated Matt, the patriarch of the Downey family, with 1 move. These 2 things spread in a very short period of time, and the speed of spread was unprecedented. The names of Jason and Loken also resounded throughout the imperial capital in a short period of time, radiating in all directions.